Hey friends, how's everyone going? Thank you so much for being here. So this live, it was supposed to be a video, and I attempted to do the video quite a few times, did not like it. Every single time I did it, and I'm just like, screw it, let me go ahead and just go live. It's kind of my style, doing a little bit more rambling than normal. So I hope you all enjoy talking about modern horror comics. I really love horror. I love spooky season. I really enjoy a good horror movie, and I've really 2020 has just felt like the absolute plot of a horror movie. So thank goodness we have comics to let us escape, right? Right. Okay, so I'm not sure where everyone's at. I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's just starting to get a little bit chilly here, but definitely always in the mood for spooky shit. I feel like there's been a pretty big change in the way that horror has shifted, and it does this often. When you think about the origins of horror, or not necessarily the origins, but like, what scared people in Victorian times. It may have been ghosts. It may have been, um, specters or whatever, and that was what scared them back then. If you take a look at what maybe scared people in the early 20th century, maybe it was some War of the Worlds type shit. Not that we're not scared of that now. Maybe the villain in the 80s was something more along the lines of, the villain was the big bad guy from the corporation, or, we were getting some. To me, the 80s is like the classic. You think like all of that horror from Halloween. My personal favorite is going to be Candyman. Um, so just thinking about all of those, I think that modern horror has shifted. Not only are we taking a different look into it, different people are able to tell horror stories now. I've recently been watching Lovecraft Country, which is absolutely incredible, and it speaks to a very specific type of, I think, mindset, and what is scary to some people that we maybe not have gotten. Same thing with movies like Get Out and Us. So I want to talk about specifically here. I'm talking about modern horror and what that means. What are the implications of that? What's the modern boogeyman that we're taking a look at? So thank you all for being here with me, talking about modern horror. All of the things that I picked out today, I've got 10 ones that like are the ones that have really been on my brain, have just been bugging me, I guess. Have really gotten to something in me thinking about modern horror. So thank you to everyone in the chat. I want to go ahead and say hello to the chat, and I'd love to know if everyone's reading these. I'd love to know if you haven't heard of these, or if you've heard of them and haven't read them yet. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things that I really enjoy is I love horror anthologies. Something that's really cool about horror is the ability, when a good writer does it, is the ability to write a really good horror story in a very short time frame. How do you set up who the villain is? How do you set up the person who is experiencing the terror, the character, the protagonist, how they're experiencing it? How do you get into their mindset pretty quickly? So I'm a really big fan of horror anthologies, or anthologies in general. And I picked this book up in 2018, and that is Hungry Ghost. It was done by Anthony Bourdain as well as Joel Rose. And man, this book, like, not only is it beautiful, it's haunting. It starts off with chefs sitting around a table, basically trying to freak each other out. The who can tell the spookiest story, maybe something like, a mythology that they, like a legend, that they learned. So this one goes into different anthologies, everything from pirate stuff to uh, just a lot more gruesome. Like when I think like animal body horror, that shit kind of gets me. Not only does this feature, it does feature a lot of Asian mythology, which is pretty cool. And I really enjoy that. It gives you a guide to some of the Asian like mythology, monsters, ghosts, and things like that you're seeing, which is really awesome. Um, And not only does it do that, and because it was curated by Anthony Bourdain, it does include some recipes in the back. Now, I'm not a very good cook, chef whatsoever at all. You will not really find me ever cooking, especially something like, that's what frightens me the most maybe about this book, is that it thinks that I know how to cook, and I do not. I will never be cooking anything like ossobuco. Maybe if someone wanted to, cook for me, but please be afraid of me cooking. That's the real horror story there, is thinking about me cooking. This book, because it's an anthology series, we actually get to see a lot of different artists on it, like Paul Pope. We've got Francesco Francavilla. We've also we've got Vanessa Del Rey. So we've got a lot of really good artists in here. Possibly the saddest part about this book is that it was curated by Anthony Bourdain, who passed away in 2018. He died by suicide, which was incredibly tragic. He was a wonderful person. So this book has a lot in it. If you haven't read it and you want some really gruesome, weird, especially around the mythologies, this one is a really good one. Hungry Ghost, Anthony Bourdain, Joel Rose. They also worked on a book called Get Hero, about a sushi chef. I haven't checked that one out, but it was supposed to be really good. But I really enjoyed Hungry Ghost by them. Okay. So next one on my list, I think one of, like, when you think about horror and you think about like the different genres of horror, or you think about the different, you've got slasher, or you've got more psychological, or you've got like ghost and hauntings. One of like the classic settings of horror movies, horror stories, is going to be the haunted house. Now think about if you just moved into a haunted house and you it is haunted by a xenophobic, racist ass bigot, and you are a young Muslim American woman, and you have just moved into a house that is haunted by an old racist demon. This one, I think that it's incredibly scary, because the main character, not only does she face racism and face some horrible shit from the ghost that is haunting her in this book, she's also getting it, even when she leaves the house, she's experiencing terror, even from people within her family. So Brunsic Pichashodi wrote it, and then, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the, Aaron Campbell. I almost said Jamal Campbell, but Aaron Campbell did the artwork for it, and I really think that that's what makes it so damn creepy, is just, if you can see, it's like pretty, what I would call dirty lines. They are very expressive. So this one, I think it spoke to not just the racism that is just horrible and absolutely terrifying, but it also speaks to a little bit of modern horror. So this one, it was really good. It's called Infidel, if I didn't already say that before. It came out, I believe, in 2016 or 2017. So Infidel was another one on my list, especially if you're liking things like, I think, Lovecraft Country, and if you like things like Get Out and Us, you are definitely going to understand Infidel and why it is so terrifying. So next one on my list, I really appreciate all the comments. I want to go ahead and say, hey John, hey Jesus, hey Puff. Want to go ahead and say hi to all of you. Okay, so the next one on my list, kind of in the vein of that, a little bit of a haunted house, maybe more of like your family and the family legacy haunting you, is a book by, published by Vault Comics, called The Plot. Now, I feel like Vault has recently been on my radar a little bit more, especially within the last couple of years. When I think of the horror stories that I really like, I usually think of like Image or Dark Horse, Vertigo, but Vault has been publishing a couple things. I recently read These Savage Shores. It didn't make it onto this list for me, but it's, it's a good contender. However, the plot was really interesting, basically about family legacy and how that haunts you. So if you like stories about you know, someone in your family passes away and maybe the ghost that's haunting you is family related, and what's the family bullshit that is coming up, and there's a really spooky like graveyard bog thing going on that, I don't know, there's some really weird moments where it like sucks people down, and it's got the, I'm gonna go ahead and say the trope of like family moves to town and all of that, but I really enjoyed this artwork. The plot, published by Vault Comics. Hello, I want to go ahead and say hi to the chat. I want to go ahead and say hi, Adrian. Puff agrees is that the plot is great. Literally never heard of this one. Way to go, Vault. Yeah, seriously, like Vault Comics has been really doing it lately. I really enjoyed Vagrant Queen, which was a very short-lived sci-fi series on the Sci-Fi Channel, and the comic was really good, but the plot is pretty creepy. Another one that has been on the list, and I feel like this has been one of those really hot books. If you got the chance to get the single issues when it was coming out, man, you are lucky, because this one just came out of left field. It's published by Boom Studios. We've got James Tinian IV, as well as Werther Deledra. It's Something is Killing the Children. Man, if you've been reading this, you know. If you know, you know, man. This one is really cool. Slaughter, oh my goodness, Erica Slaughter. That's the beauty that we see on the cover right now. Erica Slaughter is basically in the monster killing business, and she learns that this town is haunted with monsters. She meets up with a kid who ended up being one of the lone survivors of a monster attack, and not only are they faced with the bullies from the town that they have to battle, because basically the whole town hates them, thinks that they're pieces of shit, and they have to battle the monsters too. So this one's pretty interesting. Something is Killing the Children. I feel like this has really been getting good in the second arc and the single issues that are coming out right now, because you see a little bit more of like a backstory, you see a little bit more emotion from the main character, Erica Slaughter. So this one is really cool. So it seems like, yeah, Boom, killing the game right now. First issue was great. Need to read the trade 100%. Tinian, I think that he's been doing so good. There's so many titles that he's just been killing it at. Yeah, cool. So I'm really glad to see that people are reading this, because seriously, like, I was working in a comic book shop when this came out, and it was like, oh, there's this interesting new title that's coming out. And then literally that day we had calls about it. We had people coming in, and it's like, well, you should have been there, you know, a month ago, final order cutoff to get this. But seriously, pick up the trade, pick up the singles when you can, because it's really, really freaking good. Okay, another one that's on my list. If you follow me on Instagram, you follow the weekly show that I do with Dan on Comic Chop News, you know that I like this one. It was actually my pick for like 2 months ago for our graphic novel book club, and that is Philadelphia. We actually not only did we get a chance to read this one, but we got a chance to talk to Rodney Barnes, the author, about it. And this is seriously one of my favorite titles that come out each week. Like, it's on the top of my pull list when it comes out. This week, I think it was issue 8 came out, and there was a really cool reveal at the end. There's some really cute like nods to things, but it's basically about this detective who comes home to bury his father, who has recently died. Turns out not only does he have to like dig up family issues, but he's also dealing with there's a vampire infestation in Philadelphia, led by none other than John Adams, who has been a vampire all of these centuries. And now, not only are they tackling like what it means to have a revolution, but what does it mean to want a revolution, and what they started hundreds of years ago. What's been the legacy of what happened, 200 years ago during the founding of the country, and it all got fucked up. Thanks, John Adams. Now you gotta try to fix it, and you're a vampire and you're trying to take over. So this one's really good. Not only does it tackle like issues that vampires would have in modern Philadelphia, but we're also talking about the racism of legacy, or the legacy of racism, and we're talking about systemic racism in a way. This one was really fun. There's a quote in here that John Adams' wife tells him, "Hey, your suffering will be legendary even in hell," which is a kind of a throwback to Hellraiser. I actually asked Rodney Barnes about that, and he said it was something that was told to him. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So there's a lot of really personal details that he put in here. So highly recommend Philadelphia. Another one of those titles that was just an absolute sleeper hit, published by Image. And man, Rodney Barnes just kills it with this. Literally kills it with it. No pun intended, or maybe did I intend it? I don't know. But Philadelphia is so freaking good. Okay. Glad to see. Yay, Philadelphia, Kim. Like I know that you're a big fan of Philadelphia. Yep, Dan, I see you on here. So good to, if you want to join us for our next graphic novel book club, we'll actually be talking about something. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, I hope everyone can still... Okay, Philadelphia Volume 1 was fun, yeah. Like I said, it's been on my list, on my pull list, and it's usually at the top of the stack. So, anyways, the next book on my list is, I don't know if you accidentally held it up. You may have just gotten a sneak peek. You may know what it is. If you know me, you probably know what it is, because I love it. I talk about this all the time. But it's Mercy. No, I'm just kidding, Dan. It's not Mercy. It's Bitterroot. I did a video on this on my channel, so I won't go into like crazy detail about it. But this one is another one of those that really, in a very specific way, talks about how the racism of the past is affecting this family. Racism is literally creating demons that they are the ones who have to go out and attack them. Can they be brought over to the good side, I guess? Or do you just have to go ahead and kill them? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with demons and monsters that want to kill you for a very specific reason? Not only does this talk about, like, it's a really cool Harlem Renaissance, almost steampunk, sci-fi horror book, but it's also a really interesting trip into history. I believe that this one's just about to wrap up its second arc, so I'm really excited to read that, because this one is so phenomenal. David Walker, Chuck Brown, Sanford Green, like that combo of writing and art, man, it absolutely kills it. It's absolutely beautiful. I would also say that if you watched the recent Watchmen on HBO, you're going to enjoy this. There's so many things that you heard on that this is just going to resonate with you so much. So not only is there really interesting, like the artwork's beautiful, but there's some really cool discussion guides in the back. So if you're like a history nerd like me, you're going to love that shit. I love history guides. I love to learn something. So you get some really cool fan art. You also get those little guides in the back of the trade, as well as the single issues. So I highly recommend picking up the single issues. I'm really glad that Kim, you agree that Lovecraft Country, if you enjoyed Lovecraft Country, if you enjoyed what was going on in Watchmen, read Bitterroot. Like, it will 100% resonate with you. I hope you all don't mind if I drink a little bit of tea really quick. Anyone drinking anything fun in the chat? Are you drinking tea like me, like a boring lady, or maybe you drinking something a little bit more fun? All right. So, next one on my list is actually one that came out, I believe it started in 2014, and this one, not necessarily that it's disappointing, because it's really fun. I think that it was absolutely incredible when it came out. It was doing some really fun things. However, because we only have the one volume and we only have one shot from it, with a little bit of, the creators have been teasing a return, but we haven't seen it yet, and that's Witches. it's going to be Witches with a Y. So we've got Snyder and Jock doing the writing and the artwork. And this one, in the same way, I got a lot of vibes when I was reading the plot, when I was reading Witches, and I would say this one isn't necessarily about witches themselves. But this family, you know, as they do, move to a new town, come to find out the younger daughter, Sailor Rook, is pledged, and she moved because of a bullying incident gone too far. Now she's moved to this new town, and they don't really like her there either. Gets haunted. Bad Egg was the like little one shot that came out, and what was that, 4 years ago that came out, and we haven't really seen anything since. So this one was really spooky. I feel like the artwork is like you can see here, it's kind of like, it's, I don't want to give anything away, but it's, you know, kind of messy. So I think that the disruption on the page really adds to the horror element. It's really hard to do horror. It's really hard to like scare people, in my opinion, reading a book, because a big part of horror movies to me is going to be like that soundtrack. Like, what's the feeling that you get? And maybe it's the fact that I can just easily close this and put it down. But I do think that the artwork does add to that effect. Witches certainly does that. So Jock does an incredible job with the artwork on this book. So hopefully we do get a sequel to it soon, or we get another arc of it soon. Snyder, what are you doing? Just go ahead and give us more of this. Give the people what they want. So pledged is pledged. Like, seriously, that's something, that's one of the lines in the books, and you see it, and it's just, it's pretty haunting. So Witches was another one of those horror books from the last 10 years. So another one of the horror books that's on my list that is, I would say that it is an anthology, but not in the same way that the first book that I mentioned, the first book, Hungry Ghost, but it does relate to food. It's going to be Ice Cream Man. This one is so wacky and weird, and it's kind of an anthology, but in a different way. It's still got this like central character that moves along through each like issues, a new thing, whether it's tackling like gluttony or someone's maybe fears about getting older. This one is a pretty weird psychological thriller, and it looks sweet, but man, it's so weird and it's so wacky. Ice Cream Man, I think right now is on its like 5th or 6th volume, so there's a lot to pick up on. This is just the first volume, but each one is going to be like, each issue is like a different story, and it's continued along with this really creepy character, the Ice Cream Man, who I want to go ahead and say this one has some like Twilight Zone vibes, but like seriously even creepier. I'm not sure. I feel like the end of each Twilight Zone episode, I got like a story, or I got a like, here's the lesson that you need to learn from it. This, I feel like I don't get any lesson. I feel like maybe the lesson is I'm a depressed adult. That's the lesson that I got from it. And isn't that, you know, facing your own mortality? That's kind of horrific. So, yeah, Ice Cream Man getting a lot of love. Definitely vibes to the Crypt Keeper. I'm really glad. It sounds like people are reading this one. Really, really creepy. I know it does not look like this one would be a horror book. I think I actually avoided it when it first came out, because I'm like, Ice Cream Man, why the fuck would I love ice cream, but I don't necessarily want to read this book. And then I found out what it was about, and then it was horror related, and like Crypt Keeper, Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone, maybe a little bit of Black Mirror. But man, Ice Cream Man is so good, and it's so wacky, and it's so weird. So I'm glad that I'm seeing a lot of love in the chat about this, because man, it's creepy, it's good, it's weird, and it's wacky, and you want a wild ride, man, this is it. So surprising. Alrighty, so on to the next one. This one's my 9th book, and one of the things that got me into horror was the Victorian Gothic novel. Like, I remember reading those growing up. And this book here, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a true horror book, but it definitely goes back to like those Victorian ghosts. And it's not necessarily Victorian, but it's going to be By Chance or Providence by Becky Cloonan. This one is set more like, there's different stories, and it's set more into like a medieval fantasy than like Victorian, but I totally get like, you know, Ghost Lady by the Sea, like werewolves, those types of things. Man, this one's beautiful. It's kind of heartbreaking. There's a lot of loss in this story, but the artwork is just absolutely stunning. Becky Cloonan's art is just, let me see if I can find here. Man, it's really fantastic. And I think that the dark, spooky, I just imagine myself in like a long, maybe flowy dress haunting a castle. That's what I get when I think about this. I absolutely love this cover too. Becky Cloonan also came out with a tarot deck, an oracle deck that was based on some of the artwork on this, and I'm so glad I snagged it because even that's super beautiful. So if you do like that like original Victorian like Gothic horror novel vibes, I would highly recommend picking this up. It was actually originally published as a webcomic, I believe, and then put into an anthology maybe 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. So Becky Cloonan, By Chance or Providence. All right, the last one on my list, I know I said 10, but I lied. I'm actually going to give you folks one more. It's going to be 2, and that's because it's pretty cool. Spoiler alert, I'm going to maybe even see if the chat wants to guess and see what my next pick might be based on information. Can you guess what the next title will be? What my like #1 top rated horror comic book of the last 10 years is going to be? I wonder if you all guessed it. Okay, so it's going to be Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. And Chilling Adventures of Sabrina came out of this one, Afterlife with Archie. And Afterlife with Archie actually started because they were doing Life with Archie. There's a moment, you know, spoiler alert, Archie dies, and they go into the afterlife and kind of this like alternate. They did a variant cover for Afterlife, and it just kind of kicked off. So this one, there's a lot more spookier shit happening in the Riverdale universe, even though there's always some spooky shit happening, I guess. But this one is not the Archie. It is not going to be the comic that you would pick up on the like grocery store shelf. I always remember like Archie like picking up that little, like going through the supermarket line and picking up the little like Archie comic. This is not it. It's a lot more gruesome, even though I would say that it has some of like millennial vibes. They're in high school. They're going to like high school parties, but oh no, zombie infestation. It's really fun. So that was Afterlife with Archie, and I feel like a lot of people are really familiar with Chilling Adventures of Sabrina because of the show. And seriously, in the same exact way that like Afterlife with Archie is not going to be like your kid's book that you're going to see. This one is it's crazy. It's so satanic. It is not like a little tween book. This one is absolutely horrifying. What ends up happening, if you're unaware, if you haven't read the comic, if you haven't watched the show, basically what happens is Sabrina, you know, she's a witch. She finds out that she has to pledge her soul to Satan, and does she really want to do that, even though everyone around her is just grappling to, they would bend over backwards to, you know, do Satan's bidding and have that power. She does not necessarily want it, or she wants to keep her own power. So seriously, when I say I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview, it's maybe PG-13 plus. So anyways, There's some, you know, lots of blood, some nudity, a lot of Satanism in here, and seriously, this one is fantastic. I absolutely enjoyed this. I think that it shocked a lot of people because it wasn't what anyone was expecting. So 100% recommend Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. If you have watched the Netflix show, you still need to go ahead and read the source material because it's hella good. She's a teenage witch. She has to pledge her soul to Satan. Does she really want to do that? So yeah, this one, I feel like the artwork by Robert Hack really did it for me. Just because it's that like I mentioned before, that scratchy, very kinetic type artwork. It's a beautiful book, but man, it is chilling, and I highly recommend it. I know I said that I was only going to talk about 10, or at least my top 10, but what I'd also like to do is talk a little bit about some of my other favorites that maybe didn't make it to the list, but still deserve to be counted. Because, you know, your girl, I could talk about comic books all day, every day. In fact, if you do enjoy me talking about comic books all day, every day, please go and like and subscribe. This is the moment where I'll give you a few seconds to like and subscribe down here, turn on notifications, whatever you need to do while I take a sip of my tea, and then we'll talk about some of the other ones that did not make it to my list, and maybe why they should have been on there, but didn't end up on there. So, like and subscribe. Okay. So I mentioned this one very briefly, and it didn't make it to my list because I literally just picked it up 2 weeks ago and read it today. But this one, These Savage Shores, everyone who had been telling me about it was like, it's really good. It's underrated. You need to read it. And even I go ahead and see it, and I didn't pick it up. And finally, even after buying it 2 weeks ago, I had it, and it kept kind of ending up on the bottom of my now really big to be read list. But this one was really, really interesting. It does, I feel like I say this every time I talk about a new vampire story. I'm like, oh, it's a vampire story, and it's doing something completely new for a vampire story. I feel like I say that a lot, but man, this one really does it. It's not just your typical, I don't know, London vampires. It takes a little bit of a different perspective, which I really appreciated. If I had read this one a little bit sooner, it probably would have ended up on my list. It's also published by Vault Comics, which I was just mentioning the plot earlier, which is another publisher that's, I feel like, isn't on people's radar enough, but they're doing really great things, and These Savage Shores was really fun. Okay, next one on my list is one that my friend Dan actually introduced. He's in the chat, Comic Chop News. If you aren't already following him, please go and do so. We have comics chat every single week. We even do graphic novel book club, which we talked about this book and the next book that I'm about to talk about. So if you want to join us, not only do we do graphic novel book club, where we're going to be talking about Sabrina this upcoming month, but we also talk about one of our favorite books, which is Dune. So we're doing a Dune over. We're rereading Dune, and we are going 2 or 3 chapters each week, so you can see us tomorrow on Monday talk about that. Alrighty. So thank you, Dan, for introducing me to this book, because right now there's a sequel out, and I've really been digging it. But that's Nailbiter. This one gets compared to Twin Peaks a lot, and I think it's just the spooky town vibe thing going on. But there is a town in Oregon where there is a ton of serial killers. Why? We don't really know, but we're going to investigate it. The main one is the Nailbiter, who chews the tips of people's fingernails off, which that type of shit happening kind of freaks me out. So if you're into that, I mean, I'm not gonna kink shame you or anything. You get it. But man, this one is really weird. And there is a series, Nailbiter Returns, that's out right now, which is pretty freaking good. So if you like weird serial killer books, Nailbiter is probably right up your alley. Alrighty. kind of catching up on the comments in the chat, which I'm really, really appreciating. I'm loving all the love for Becky Cloonan. I see some Robert Hack love in there, and a disturbing lack of Archie versus Sharknado. I apologize. I've read the other Archie, or some of the other Archie stuff, like Jughead the Hunger and Vampironica. I didn't enjoy Blossom 666 as much as I thought I was going to, but it was still, kind of enjoyable, so I haven't gotten all the other stuff yet. Okay. Another book that we actually, on Comic Chop News, on Graphic Novel Book Club, we literally just reread this one last month, and that is Black Monday Murders. It's, to use Dan's words, like Satanic Wall Street. There's some conspiracy shit going on, and there's murders happening by global elitist, capitalist elitist, and you get a little bit of a glimpse into their world and how horrifying it is for us, and just how, like, gonna go ahead and do like a little spell in another language, and I'm gonna make a lot of money, and if people have to die, then they have to die. So that's what Black Monday Murders are kind of about. I'm not going to spoil it too much, but this is another one of those books where I feel like the artwork really does it for me. This one's kind of a gruesome page, so kids, if you're watching, you may want to ask your parents if you should be watching. I don't know why you're watching the channel if you're a kid. I mean, I get it. I don't know. So anyways, there's some pretty gruesome stuff that happens. It's done by one of my favorite authors, Jonathan Hickman. So if I wouldn't necessarily say if you're enjoying the new X-Men run, if you should be reading this, because this isn't what's going on in X-Men. This is completely different. But maybe if you liked East of West, I think that you'd enjoy Black Monday Murders. Like if East of West was more of like horror and whatever. So he does give you those big like info dumps. You get to see like chat transcripts, you get to see letters, so there's so many incredible details in this book that really just, it makes it. So Black Monday Murders by Jonathan Hickman. It's also published by Image, which is like the majority of my list is published by Image, so go figure. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pause just a moment. Anyone in the chat who agrees, disagrees, wants to see something, I've got a little stack still over here, so if I'm not naming your favorite, it might be coming up. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take a sip of tea, and we'll start talking about the next one. I see a shout out to East of West in the comments. East of West is seriously one of my absolute, like, probably top titles ever, which is pretty big considering how many comics I read. Absolutely love East of West. So next one on my list is Clean Room by Gail Simone. This one I feel like is underappreciated and did not get the love that it deserved. Sorry guys, I've got a cat who is going to join me for this. He likes horror as well. So anyways, Clean Room by Gail Simone. This is definitely going to be a psychological thriller. It goes into a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of psychological horror, and getting into the minds of people and really horrifying them, terrifying them based on what, their personal experiences are. There's also a little bit of, do I want to say like aliens in this? It's aliens. But there is some like otherworldly stuff going on, and it's pretty cool. There's some pretty like gruesome scenes in here. I don't want to scare the kids too much, so if you want to go ahead and cover their eyes, but just some really weird stuff going on. Yeah. So I thought this one was really interesting, and it just doesn't get the love that I think that it deserves. I'm also a really big Gail Simone stan. Is that what the kids are saying now? Stan? I stan Gail Simone. So Gail Simone, if you're watching, I really enjoyed Clean Room. Alrighty, another one on my list, and this one I feel like there were a lot of titles that were very similar to this, so it didn't end up on my top 10 list, but this one is Harrow County. I feel like Cullen Bunn gets a lot of credit for being a fantastic writer, fantastic horror author, um, and Harrow County was pretty good. There's some really creepy, like, haunting in the woods type stuff, so if you're into that. I also just really enjoyed the characters and the conversations that they had. It made it really real for me. So I want to also go ahead and shout out my friend Mars, who just appeared in the chat. I love you, and I'm so glad you're here for the spooky. You're my girl, and I hope you're doing well. I hope this list also makes you proud. I know that you and I talked about this list already. You may have seen the previous 10. I'll go ahead and I'll give a rundown at the end of this. But so anyways, Harrow County was really good. I feel like this is another one that didn't get a lot of the love that it deserved. Maybe I didn't hear enough about it. Maybe it's just because at the time I feel like the market was oversaturated with stories by Cullen Bunn. So who knows? But Harrow County was really good. It was really creepy. There's some weird body stuff that happens in it that's like, you know, like skin peeling off. So, you know, if you're into skin peeling off, maybe go with Harrow County. Alrighty. I feel like I keep saying this all the time. Once again, another one that I do not feel like this got the credit that it deserved. But I read this one and I'm like, why the hell didn't I pick this one up already? And I absolutely love the artist, love the writer. That's going to be Redlands. I read this one maybe like 3 months ago when I picked up a whole bunch of books. I read this one and um, I literally like went and like bought the second volume the same day that I finished this. Um, Absolutely loved it. South Florida, where I'm like homegrown from South Florida, and there's some weird witchy stuff going on, detective stuff going on, hauntings and possessions. Like, this book was so good. Once again, did not get the credit that it deserved. And I would have to say, I think that has everything to do with the name. The name Redlands, like, growing up in South Florida, like, to me, like, or, you know, I don't really know where Redlands would be. I kind of place it like somewhere in the Everglades, somewhere like outside of Miami. But man, this book, I think that if it was titled something different, would have gotten a lot more credit than it deserved. So really, really good. I believe it's 2 volumes. I'm not sure if there's a third. There might be, but Jordi Belair, and Vanessa Del Rey. Vanessa Del Rey also has some artwork in the first book that I mentioned, Hungry Ghost. So really, really enjoyed that. I feel like if people really liked Sabrina, you would also really like Redlands. So check it out. Alrighty, I'm almost done. So thank you everyone for being here. I've got a couple more books. Thank you so much for hanging out. This one, if you're still in the chat, this one's for you, my friend. I feel like this one was really triggering for a lot of people because we don't really know what's going on, but there's, like, in Gideon Falls, there's this weird, it's been a minute since I've read this one, but there's some like weird stuff going on with, like, there's like a nail and there's a barn and, you know, going through the city, and it's so weird and it's so wacky. I am a huge Jeff Lemire stan. I will read pretty much anything that he writes, from Dissenter, Black Hammer, all of it. I really enjoyed Gideon Falls. I apparently haven't enjoyed it enough to pick up, like, whatever fucking volume it's on. Like, maybe it's on the 7th volume now. But man, I did really enjoy the first volume of this. It's pretty weird. I think at the same time I was reading this, I was reading the book Outcast by Robert Kirkman, and I enjoyed this one better than I enjoyed Outcast. So if that tells you, you know, whatever, I did really enjoy Gideon Falls. So, alrighty, let's go ahead. Okay, once again, I'm kind of like skipping the chat, so I want to go ahead and, like, I love the comments going on in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's go ahead and say, I know Dan and Mars, I know you're fighting in the chat. You better behave. Gideon Falls. So there is a little bit of like love for Jeff Lemire in here, so thank you. Next one on my list is also going to be by him, and that's Family Tree. This one is a little bit more easily digestible than Gideon Falls, so maybe if you did not like Gideon Falls, then try Family Tree. This first volume is going back to the Image 999. Granted, it's pretty small. It's 4 volumes, but I really enjoyed it. There's some, basically, like, there's this generational thing where you get passed down, where your insides start becoming a tree, which is really weird. But then there are these people that come after the family. So this one was really fun. I do think that it's a lot more palatable than, say, Gideon Falls. This one is also, let's say, oh, it's not even telling me here, 6. So this one's going to be 6 issues. This one's going to be 4 issues. So both of them are actually $9.99 from what I just saw on the back. So you do get a little bit of a better deal because there's more stuff in Gideon Falls, but Family Tree is definitely going to be a little bit more palatable, I assure you. Okay, I think I've got my my black cat, who, of course, he would join me for my horror video. This is Malcolm, everyone. He's a precious little baby. He's also a teenager. He's like 13, 14 years old, and I love him. So the last one that I have on the list right here, and remember, these ones are all of my, that I just mentioned, are all the ones that are like consolation prizes, didn't necessarily make it to the list, but this one, I feel like, once again, sleeper hit. It's published by Boom Studios, Victor Laval's Destroyer, and basically what happens in here is that, I'm trying to like make it so that you can't see the reflection in the lights, but basically in Destroyer, this young child was murdered by police and is the last in line to the Frankenstein family. So his mother, a scientist, does revive him and uses him to, I don't want to say like get her revenge, but man, this one's really good if you like the Frankenstein mythos, especially thinking about the speculative horror and history and like sci-fi. All of this blends together with that. If you enjoyed Bitterroot, if you're enjoying Lovecraft Country, I think that you would really enjoy Victor Laval's Destroyer. Highly recommend it. Once again, a sleeper hit. Doesn't get enough credit, but maybe it's almost my fault because I didn't put it on the top list, but you know, it made it to the top 20. Maybe I could do like a top 20 of the last 20 years, who knows. But what I want to do is, for everyone who is still here with me in the chat, maybe you came in late, maybe, you know, I didn't send it to you to come and join me, but I do want to go ahead and give a quick recap on what books I did include on the list for everyone who came in late. Okay, so the first one that was on my list was Hungry Ghost by Anthony Bourdain, Joel Rose, or Rose. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. It's an anthology, but there is a lot of artwork. Vanessa Del Rey, Paul Pope, Francesco Francavilla, all in there. Okay, next one that was on my list, if you like haunted houses, but imagine if your, you know, haunted house is haunted by a racist demon, xenophobic demon, and you're a Muslim American woman who just moved into that house and you're just trying to live your best life and they keep haunting you. That's Infidel, and it's really good because the terror doesn't end when you leave the haunted house. It's kind of everywhere. So on to the next one. The next one that I mentioned was The Plot, published by Vault. Vault Comics has been doing a lot of really fun things. Highly underrated publisher. Okay, next one on my list. A lot of people have really been liking this, and that's Something Is Killing the Children. I feel like everyone should be reading this. I feel like a lot of people are. Fantastic book. James Tinian is just doing some wacky things. There's so many books that he's doing that's just absolutely incredible. So definitely worth a read. Okay. A couple people in the chat will recognize this. Shout out for Philadelphia. I know Mars was on the show when we interviewed Rodney Barnes, and that was just a crazy, wacky, fun ride when we did get to talk to him. But Philadelphia, basic rundown is that modern day Philadelphia is infested with vampires, and the vampires are controlled by none other than former President John Adams, who is also a vampire. Him and his wife are kicking ass, kicking ass, I don't know, as vampires. So pretty interesting one right there. Next one on my list gets so much love from me. I absolutely love this title, Bitterroot. I know I mentioned it before. If you enjoyed the new Watchmen movie, if you're enjoying Lovecraft Country, you've got to read Bitterroot if you're not already. This did get movie rights picked up. I think that there should be a movie coming out soon. I really hope that people pick this up. It did also win an Eisner Award this year in 2020. So I don't know what other reason I need to do to like sell this book to you, but man, you've got to absolutely read it. Alrighty, next one on my list, which is Wytches, not like WI. We're gonna go a little bit fancy here. I don't know, Old English. Family haunting. You get pledged. People try to murder you, use you for their own ends. You know, we've got Snyder, Jock, Hollingsworth, really great team. Hopefully, more issues of this come out. There was a one-shot that was done, but you know, we don't know. Hopefully, it comes out. I know, Snyder. I know you're watching because you watch my shows. I don't know, whatever. But you know, give us some more witches. Whatever you're doing. I know you're off doing whatever with DC or whatever, but give us more witches, please. Okay. Then, also on the list, Ice Cream Man, Tales of the Crypt, but I want to say Black Mirror, but maybe just even weirder. It looks sweet, but it's not. It's like cotton candy vomit horror. I don't know. It was really, really weird. It looks like it'd be a kid's book, and I feel bad for any kid who maybe accidentally bought this by their parents. Oops. Your kid is probably now psychologically traumatized, so good on you. Really weird book. I think some adults would be traumatized by this book, but it was a really good read. There's like 5 volumes. Check it out. Each new issue is like a new story, so even if you haven't picked up the first volume, even you don't have to read all 5 volumes, just go ahead and start picking it up off the shelf at your local comic book store. Check out Ice Cream Man. Maxwell Prince does this one. It's really good. Really weird. Okay. And by chance or providence, I feel like I have to talk about this one a lot because this one definitely does not get the credit that it deserves. And when I think about horror, I do think about, like, to me, not necessarily the origin of horror, but I think about modern horror that came from Victorian ghost stories. And man, this one, even though it's set in medieval times, this one is the total throwback to that, like, Victorian, like, mansion being haunted, but it's like castles and shit being haunted, and the artwork is just absolutely beautiful. Becky Cloonan is a goddess, and we need more Becky Cloonan. And the number one big bad that made it to my list, you probably guessed it, or if you were here earlier and you're just still hanging out, we got Afterlife with Archie, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. This is not the drugstore, like, you know, supermarket aisle comic book that you're gonna pick up. This one is really, it's weird. We've got, like, in this universe, we've got zombies and vampires and all of that. Afterlife with Archie, but Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is really where the spooky shit happens. If you haven't watched the Netflix show, go ahead and watch it, but go ahead, if you have watched the Netflix show, you've got to read this book. Seriously, it's weird, it's creepy. We're actually reading it for a graphic novel book club with Comic Shop at Comic Shop News. So if you did enjoy this, if you want to read it again for spooky season, in a couple weeks, we're going to go live and we're going to talk about it over there. So I want to go ahead and say thank you to everyone who joined. I really appreciate you. Please, please, please like and subscribe if you like this weird little corner of the internet that I seem to inhabit. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and also if you followed me through Linktree, don't forget I have a Patreon for as little as $2 a month. That's like, I don't know, 6 cents a day, 7 cents a day. You can get some really weird content from a weird little girl in Portland, Oregon who likes to talk about comic books and horror and science fiction. Also, this cat. You'd be supporting this cat too. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoy this spooky holiday season. I can't wait to do more videos. I am planning to do a couple videos talking about witchy stuff. I want to go ahead and talk about Junji Ito, and I'm probably going to do a Swamp Thing video. So please, if you enjoy this and you want to see those things, let me know by liking and subscribing and following me on Patreon. Alrighty, friends. Have a good night.